Ladies, let me tell you something that might shake the room a little, but it needs to be said. Stop being too nice to men. Yeah, I said it. Some of y'all are giving out kindness like it's candy on Halloween, and all it's doing is feeding grown boys who don't deserve a seat at your table, let alone a piece of your peace. See, there's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. Too many women confuse the two. You're out here overextending yourself, always trying to prove that you're the good one, the loyal one, the ride or die. But for what? For who? A man who disappears for days, then comes back with some weak apology and a smile because he knows you're too nice to hold him accountable. No, ma'am. Let me tell you what being too nice gets you. It gets you taken for granted. It gets you overlooked. It gets you used, because some men don't respond to kindness with respect. They see it as an opportunity to manipulate. You keep cooking, cleaning, loving, texting first, forgiving over and over, being understanding of his chaos. But he ain't understanding your worth. And that's a problem. You're not here to fix him. You're not his mama. You're not his rehab center. You are a grown woman with values, strength, and standards. So act like it. If a man can't meet you where you are emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, then he needs to walk, not you dragging him along like dead weight because you're too nice to let go. Stop letting men treat you like an option while you treat them like a priority. Stop answering every call. Stop dropping everything when he hits you up. You are not his convenience store. He doesn't get to come and go as he pleases. Make him work for your energy. Make him earn your presence. Because when you're too nice, he doesn't grow. He gets comfortable. He gets lazy. He stops showing up because he knows you will. You ever notice how the women who stop being overly nice are the ones who get respected? They say what they mean, they enforce their boundaries, and they don't beg for love. They require it. That's not cold. That's not mean. That's power. That's clarity. That's saying, I know who I am and I know what I deserve. You either meet the standard or get left behind. Now, I'm not telling you to be bitter. I'm not saying be rude or hostile. I'm saying be balanced. You can be warm without being weak. You can be loving without losing yourself. You can be understanding without being used. Don't let nice be the reason you're crying at night while he's out living free with no accountability. You are the prize, not because of what you do for him, but because of who you are. Start acting like it. Because the moment you stop being too nice and start being real, you'll see who was really for you, and who was just enjoying the benefits of your silence, your softness, and your self-sacrifice. So from now on, let them earn your kindness. Let them show up consistently. Let them prove they deserve your love, and if they don't, keep walking. You were never meant to settle. You were meant to shine. Boundaries are one of the most powerful tools a woman can have in her life, yet they are often misunderstood, ignored, or neglected, especially in relationships with men. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are guidelines to protect your peace, your energy, and your self-respect. When a woman sets clear, firm boundaries, she is telling the world, especially the men in her life, that she values herself enough to protect what she has built emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. The problem is, too many women were taught to be nice instead of being strong. You're taught to accommodate, to adjust, to give second and third chances. And before you know it, you're giving away your time, your love, your body, and your peace, all in the name of being understanding. Now, there's nothing wrong with being kind, but when kindness comes at the cost of your boundaries, you're not being kind, you're being self-destructive. Every time you let a man disrespect your time by constantly showing up late or canceling plans, and you say nothing, you're teaching him how to treat you. Every time you let a man raise his voice at you in anger, and you excuse it as stress or just how he is, you're sending a message that your emotional safety is negotiable. When you let things slide, hoping they'll fix themselves, you're betraying yourself. Because men don't learn from what you say, they learn from what you allow. Boundaries aren't about making demands. They're about stating your needs and sticking to them. They sound like, I don't allow people to speak to me that way. They sound like, I'm not okay with being in a relationship where I feel invisible. They sound like, if you can't be consistent, I'm not going to continue this. But boundaries only work if you enforce them. You can't just say it. You have to back it up with action. If a man crosses a line you made clear and you let it slide, he learns that your boundaries are just suggestions. And the moment he senses that, the respect begins to fade. The truth is, many men will test your boundaries, not because they're evil, but because they're checking to see if you love yourself more than you love their attention. They want to see if your standards are real or if they're just words. That's why setting a boundary is only half the battle. The other half is walking away when that boundary is violated. That's the part that requires strength, discipline, and self-respect. A woman with strong boundaries is not hard to love. She is hard to manipulate. And that's the difference. When a woman knows what she stands for, when she's not afraid to be alone, when she doesn't chase or beg, she becomes a mirror. She reflects a man's flaws back to him, and not every man is ready to face himself. That's why some men will call a woman with boundaries too much, cold, or difficult, but don't let that shake you. That's just resistance meeting the truth. You see, the right man will never be threatened by your boundaries. He will be drawn to them, because a man who is emotionally mature and truly interested in building something solid will see your boundaries not as a burden, but as a blessing. He will recognize that you know who you are, and he'll rise to meet that level. Boundaries also help you preserve your energy. When you know what you will and won't accept, you don't waste time in dead-end situations. You don't sit around hoping someone will change. You recognize early when someone's actions don't match their words and you act accordingly. That's how you protect your heart without building walls. That's how you stay open to love without being a fool for it. You stop giving access to people who only drain you, and you make room for the ones who actually pour into you. Setting boundaries also teaches you about yourself. It forces you to ask, what do I need to feel safe and loved? What behavior am I no longer willing to tolerate? And when you answer those questions honestly, you start to create a life that's rooted in self, worth instead of self-sacrifice. You stop shrinking to keep the peace. You stop pretending to be okay with disrespect just to avoid conflict. You begin to show up for yourself the way you always hoped someone else would. So if you've been bending, breaking, and betraying your boundaries just to keep a man, it's time to stop. You're not doing him any favors, and you're definitely not helping yourself. The kind of love you're trying to build can't exist without respect, and respect starts with you. If you don't respect your own boundaries, why would he? You don't need to be mean. You don't need to yell. You just need to be clear, firm, and consistent. And most of all, you need to believe that you deserve to be treated well, not just when everything is going good, but all the time. Boundaries don't push good men away. They protect you from the wrong ones. And if a man walks away because you had the courage to draw the line, let him. That line was never meant to trap him. It was meant to protect you. Standards are the foundation of how you allow yourself to be treated. They are not about being picky or difficult. They are about having a clear understanding of your worth and the kind of treatment you will and will not accept. A woman with standards isn't looking for perfection. She's looking for consistency, respect, and maturity. Too often, women lower their standards just to keep a man interested. You start out knowing what you want: honesty, loyalty, effort. But somewhere along the line, you begin to compromise. You let the small lies slide. You excuse the emotional unavailability. You justify the lack of effort. And little by little, your standards crumble, not because you no longer believe in them, but because you're scared he'll leave if you hold him to them. But here's the truth. If your standards scare him off, he was never meant to stay. A man who truly values you will not be intimidated by your standards. He will be inspired to rise to them. When you have standards, you're not saying, "I'm better than you." You're saying, "I know what I deserve." There's a big difference between the two. You're not being unreasonable by expecting someone to communicate with honesty, to be emotionally available, to make an effort, to show up consistently. Those are not luxuries. They are the bare minimum in a healthy relationship. But when you're too nice, you convince yourself that asking for these things is too much, and you start accepting crumbs while calling it a meal. When you lower your standards, you're teaching a man that he doesn't have to do much to keep you. You show him that you're so afraid of being alone, you'll settle for half effort, broken promises, and inconsistent love. And the more you settle, the more you suffer. Because deep down, you know you deserve better. You know you're capable of more, but you've gotten stuck in a pattern where being understanding and forgiving has become more important than being fulfilled and respected. That's not love, that's survival. And you were not created just to survive. You were created to thrive. You have to understand, standards are not meant to push love away. They are meant to protect it. They act as a filter, helping you separate the men who are serious from the ones who are just playing. A man who's only in it for convenience will run when you set standards, but a man who's in it for connection, for growth, for partnership, he'll stay, he'll listen, he'll show up. Because the right man doesn't want a woman who is easy to manipulate. He wants a woman who knows her value and doesn't compromise it for anyone. Setting and keeping your standards also helps you find peace. You're no longer overthinking, second, guessing, or chasing. You're not anxiously wondering where you stand because your standards already created the structure. You gave him the blueprint. This is how I want to be treated. This is what I need to feel safe. And this is what I will not tolerate. And if he can't respect that, then you walk. Not out of anger, but out of alignment. Because when your standards are high, you stop settling for situations that drain you, confuse you, or belittle you. A lot of women are afraid that having standards will make them end up alone. But let me tell you what's worse than being alone. Being with someone who doesn't respect you. Being with someone who makes you feel invisible. Being with someone who drains your joy and peace. That's not love. That's emotional poverty. So if the choice is between being alone with peace or being with someone who breaks you just so you can say you're not alone, choose peace every time. Because peace is the proof that your standards are protecting you. Having standards also teaches others how to love you. It sets the tone for every interaction. It says, I take myself seriously, and I expect you to do the same. And when people see that you hold yourself to a high standard, they either step up or step out, and either way, you win, because you're not here to chase anyone. You're here to build something real, with someone who sees your standards not as a challenge, but as a guide to your heart. If you've been bending your standards just to keep a man, it's time to stop. Every time you lower the bar, you lower the quality of love you receive. Raise it, hold it, stand by it, because the right one won't make you feel like you're asking for too much. He'll make you feel like you've been asking for too little. And when that happens, you'll realize that your standards didn't scare him. They prepared him for a woman like you, one who knows her worth, one who refuses to settle, one who is finally done being nice at her own expense. Self-worth is not something someone else can give you. It's something you must recognize and claim for yourself. It's the deep, inner knowing that you are valuable, that you matter, and that you deserve love, respect, and peace. Not because you've earned it through what you do for others, but simply because you exist. Too many women walk through life forgetting this truth. They measure their value based on how much they can give, how much they can forgive, how long they can hold on, or how many chances they can offer a man who continually shows them they're not a priority. That's not self-worth. That's self-neglect. When a woman lacks self-worth, it shows up in the way she loves. She accepts less than she deserves and calls it loyalty. She tolerates disrespect and calls it patience. She sacrifices her own happiness and convinces herself that this is what love is supposed to look like. But it's not. That's a broken version of love built on fear. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And as long as fear is in control, self-worth is buried underneath it. A woman with self-worth moves differently. She's not cold or closed off. She's just clear. She knows what she brings to the table, and she's not going to beg anyone to sit with her. She doesn't chase validation from men who can't see her value because she already sees it in herself. She's not looking to be completed by a relationship. She's looking to share a life with someone who respects and matches her. That's the power of self-worth. It shifts your entire perspective. You go from wondering, why doesn't he choose me, to saying, I choose me. And that changes everything. When you truly believe in your worth, you no longer tolerate inconsistency. You no longer let sweet words cover up toxic behavior. You no longer fall for potential while ignoring patterns. You start to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. You stop clinging to the idea of who someone could be and start honoring the reality of who they actually are. And if that reality doesn't align with your peace, your joy, and your standards, you walk. Not because you're heartless, but because you've finally realized you matter. Self-worth also influences how you handle heartbreak. When your worth is rooted in someone else's approval, their rejection can destroy you. It leaves you questioning everything about yourself. Was I not pretty enough? Not fun enough? Not loving enough? But when your worth is rooted in *, even heartbreak doesn't break you. It might hurt, yes, but it doesn't define you. Because you know that someone walking away doesn't mean you weren't enough. It means they weren't ready. It means they couldn't handle the depth of your heart, the strength of your spirit, or the clarity of your standards. And that's not your fault. You also stop comparing yourself to other women. You don't need to compete when you're secure in your own lane. You understand that another woman's beauty, success, or relationship doesn't take away from your own value. When your self-worth is intact, you become your own source of validation. Compliments are nice, but they don't shape your identity. Being chosen is beautiful, but it doesn't define your existence, because you've already chosen yourself. But self-worth requires work. It doesn't just show up one day and stay forever. It's something you build through self-awareness, healing, and intentional living. It's in the way you talk to yourself, the way you treat your body, the way you protect your peace, the way you say no to things that drain you. Every decision becomes an act of self-respect, even when it's hard. Even when it's lonely, even when walking away from what you wanted feels like a loss, you do it anyway, because you know you deserve more than bare minimum love. You deserve more than confusion. You deserve more than apologies with no change. And when you finally stop being nice just to be liked, you'll see that the love you've been waiting for has been waiting on to see yourself the way you were always meant to. The world will always try to convince you to shrink, to settle, to soften your voice so others can be comfortable. But your self-worth isn't up for negotiation. It's not a trend you follow when it's convenient. It's a lifestyle you live day in and day out. It's in the choices you make, the boundaries you set, and the love you give to yourself first. Because once you truly know your worth, no man can treat you like you're worthless, not even for a second. And that kind of power, that kind of peace, is the beginning of real, unstoppable transformation. Accountability is not a punishment, it is a form of maturity. It is the foundation of a healthy relationship and the ultimate sign of respect. When someone holds themselves accountable, they take ownership of their words, their actions, and their impact. But far too often, women are being nice at the expense of demanding accountability from the men they are involved with. They keep giving chances without change. They keep listening to apologies without action. They keep accepting excuses without growth. And slowly, they start to normalize dysfunction, mistaking it for love, when all it really is, lack of accountability dressed up in charm and manipulation. A man who refuses to take accountability for his behavior is a man who cannot grow. And if he cannot grow, he cannot build with you. Accountability is what separates boys from men. It is the difference between someone who blames everything and everyone else and someone who says, "You're right, I hurt you. I see it and I'm working on it." That level of honesty takes humility. And humility is necessary for any relationship that's going to last. Without accountability, there is no trust, because trust isn't just about being faithful. It's about being responsible. It's about knowing that when mistakes happen, they'll be addressed, not ignored or repeated. Too many women are playing both roles in a relationship, trying to fix, explain, justify, and make excuses for a man who won't even acknowledge what he did wrong. You become his emotional crutch, carrying the weight of problems he refuses to face. And why? Because you don't want to seem mean, because you think being understanding will eventually make him change. But here's the truth. Change doesn't come from comfort. It comes from confrontation. Until a man is made to face himself, he has no reason to become better. And if you keep shielding him from consequences, he will keep disrespecting you without remorse. There's a difference between grace and enabling. Grace says, "I see your flaw, but I also see your effort." Enabling says, "I see your flaw, but I'll pretend it doesn't matter." One invites growth, the other invites repeated pain. If he cheats and you take him back without him owning it, without him doing the inner work, he'll do it again. If he lies and you let it slide because you're scared to lose him, he'll lie again. If he disrespects you and you brush it off to keep the peace, he'll see that your boundaries aren't real. He'll know he can hurt you and still have access to you. And that's not love, that's control. A man who truly cares about you will welcome accountability, not avoid it. He won't see your expectations as a threat. He'll see them as a standard. He won't make you feel guilty for calling out his behavior. He'll thank you for helping him become better, because that's what real love does. It challenges, it corrects, and it improves. But if he resists every time you try to hold him accountable, if he flips the script and makes you asterisk the problem, if he constantly plays the victim or avoids the hard conversations, he's showing you that growth is not his priority. And if growth isn't his priority, peace will never be your reality. When you start holding men accountable, some of them will leave. Let them. That's not a loss. It's a revelation. It means they were only sticking around for what they could get away with, not what they could grow into. You are not here to babysit anyone's potential. You are not his therapist, his life coach, or his rehab center. You are a partner, not a project manager. And if he can't meet you where you are, he doesn't deserve to walk beside you. Accountability is also about holding yourself accountable. It means asking yourself, why do I keep choosing men who won't grow? Why do I stay quiet when I'm hurt? Why do I confuse forgiveness with acceptance? Self-accountability empowers you. It breaks the cycle. It reminds you that you can choose differently, that you don't have to keep rewriting the same painful story with a different character. And here's the thing, holding someone accountable doesn't have to come with anger or drama. You don't have to yell. You don't have to argue. Sometimes accountability looks like a calm conversation followed by a firm decision. Sometimes it's silence and distance. Sometimes it's walking away, not because you don't love him, but because you finally love yourself more. That's when you shift the power. That's when you stop being the woman who tolerates and start being the woman who teaches, by example, how she deserves to be treated. When accountability is present, love becomes safer. Conversations become deeper. Growth becomes possible. But when accountability is missing, all that's left is confusion, broken promises, and emotional chaos. And you were not built for that. You were built for more. So start expecting more, not with bitterness, but with boldness, because a man who cannot be responsible for his actions has no business being responsible for your heart. And the moment you stop being too nice to avoid discomfort and start demanding accountability as a standard, is the moment your whole life and love begins to change.